welcome. It's a delight to have you with us, and thank you for being here. Um, let's begin our program this evening with prayer. And as we begin our time together, let's pause for a moment to remember all those who have been separated from their homes and families during the recent immigration raids this week, this past month, the last several months. And we also hold in our hearts the loved ones they've had to leave behind, and all those living in constant fear of being taken without warning, of being torn from their children and their communities. So the prayer we'll do tonight was written by Catholic Relief Services and has been slightly adapted. This particular prayer is included in our small group program, Faith and Immigration Justice. So let us pray. God of our wandering ancestors, long have we known that your heart is with the immigrant. You were born in a family of immigrants fleeing violence in their homeland, who then gathered up their hungry child and fled into alien country. Their cry, your cry, resounds through the ages, will you let me in? Give us hearts that break open when our brothers and sisters turn to us with that same cry. Then surely all these things will then follow. Ears will no longer turn deaf to their voices. Eyes will see a moment for grace instead of threat. Tongues will not be silenced, but will instead advocate. Hands will reach out, working for peace in their homeland, working for justice in the lands where they seek safe haven. Lord, protect all immigrants in their travels, and may they find a friend in me, and so make me worthy of the refuge I have found in you. Amen. So it's my pleasure now to introduce and reintroduce you to tonight's presenters and moderator. Linda Dakin-Grimm is a senior consulting partner at Milbank LLP, where she has handled numerous jury and bench trials, appeals, and arbitration proceedings in courts across the United States. Starting in 2016, Ms. Dakin-Grimm concentrated her practice on pro bono immigration matters. And since then, she has taken on more than 100 unaccompanied children and separated families in immigration proceedings. In addition to the required legal work in immigration and state courts, Ms. Dakin-Grimm acts as counsel to several NGOs in actions against the federal government based upon unlawful immigration policies. She's a member of the board of directors of the International Institute of Los Angeles, a refugee agency, the Carl Ryan Center for Human Rights Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School, and the Southern California Catholic Task Force on Immigration, as well as a trustee of the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California. She's the author of Dignity and Justice, Welcoming the Stranger at the Border, published by Orbis Press in September of 2020. Ms. Dakin-Grimm received her BA from Yale University, her law degree from Harvard Law School, and an MA in theology from Loyola Marymount University. She was an advanced leadership fellow at Heron 2020. Welcome, Linda. And back again by popular demand, theologian Cecilia Gonzalez Andreu is a leading scholar of theological aesthetics, which she proposes as a way of bringing communities together, respect and celebrating otherness, and lift the theological insights of those who know and express themselves from the peripheries. She's one of the contributing writers for America Magazine, penning a number of significant essays on political theology, Latinx theologies, and women's issues. Her book, Bridge to Wonder, Art as a Gospel of Beauty, has received international acclaim. Dr. Gonzalez Andreu teaches at Loyola Marymount University's Department of Theological Studies, co-chairs the LMU Latino Theology and Ministry Initiative, is an active supporter of the Ignatian Solidarity Network and advisor for the Discerning Deacons Project. Cecilia was also recently inaugurated as president of the Academy of Catholic Hispanic Theologians of the United States. And welcome, Cecilia. And tonight's moderator is Just Faith staff member Heidi Villaluz, who serves as Director of Communications and Marketing. Heidi was born and raised in Los Angeles and has served in local archdiocesan leadership as a member of the Global Solidarity Action Team, the Task Force to Address Racism, and the Steering Committee for the recent Synod process. Her national leadership has included the Young Adult Working Group for the Laudato Si and the U.S. Catholic Church Conference, and organizing legislative action for the state of California as a coalition leader for Catholic Relief Services. She serves as a consultant to parishes, faith-based, and nonprofit organizations, and archdiocesan offices and initiatives. Heidi received her bachelor's degree from UCLA, her master's from Loyola Marymount University, and was commissioned as a master catechist in 2010 by the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, where she continues to live and serve today. And again, welcome, Heidi, and thank you all for being here. And Linda, let's begin with your remarks.
Thanks, Jack. Give me a second here to share my screen. Is that working? Did somebody just give me
good, Linda. It's working.
Okay. Excellent. Now let me get back to the beginning. All right. It is absolutely a pleasure to be here. Dr. Cecilia was my professor at LMU, and it's always an honor to be here with her. And Heidi reminded me that we met in 2017 on a archdiocese-sponsored trip to the border with Bishop Dave. And it is a pleasure to be here with both of you. I'm going to offer you this image to start, but maybe I'll leave it to Dr. Cecilia if she wants to pick up on it. Mary, Undoer of Knots, was a favorite image of Pope Francis. And the idea of the image is that Mary is someone to whom we can turn in impossibly knotted situations. The situation that I'm here to present about, which is the state of the law in the United States, I see as impossibly knotty and with an uncertain outcome. I'm going to just spend a couple minutes setting the table about what the system looks like, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Cecilia. There are only 4 roads to migrating to the United States to live here long-term. Family-based migration, limited to 226,000 people per year. That's what opponents call chain migration. It means wait in your country for your turn, and sometimes you wait for decades. Employment-based migration is limited to 140,000 people a year. This is for highly skilled workers who have a corporate sponsor in the US. The diversity lottery is a teeny tiny 50,000 persons per year, available to countries that have low populations in the US. And the last category, the one I work in, is humanitarian relief, which includes things like asylum, special visas, that sort of thing. There are very tight time frames on those. For example, asylum is only available for 1 year from your date of arrival in the country. That's it. Those are the roads. If you're in distress, some other country, and you can't qualify under one of these roads, your options are try and go somewhere else, try and get a tourist visa and come in that way and then just live under the radar, or sneak in at the border and try and live under the radar. But life in that circumstance amounts to hiding. You will never get a work visa. You'll have a certain kind of work only. These are not paths to permanent residency. DACA, which was an executive action, not a law, by President Obama in 2012, it deferred being deported for a short-term work permit. It never included any long-term path to residency. Temporary protected status came into being in 1990 in the Bill Clinton era. You hear people saying, I'm here on TPS. That is US law. It's a short-term status available for 6 to 18 months, available to people who happen to be here when their country experienced some kind of emergency. It was always meant to be temporary, as the word temporary says in the title. And the Trump administration is, unfortunately, within its right to end TPS in the discretion of the Director of Homeland Security. That's always been how it was set up. Unfortunately, what's happened is certain countries like El Salvador and Honduras, Nicaragua, have had TPS extended repeatedly. So there are now 1.1 million TPS holders in the US, many of whom have been here for decades. The Trump administration intends to terminate each one of the statuses and make everybody leave. But people here with TPS have married, had children, bought houses, started businesses, and now often live in what are called mixed status families. The last thing that people come on are called non-immigrant short-term work permits, where you come for a specific period of time to work in a hotel and then you leave. These are things that don't matter under the law in an undocumented person's request to stay. And I get these questions every day, but I've lived here for many years and I've never gotten in trouble. I don't have a criminal record. The government doesn't care. And it is not a factor in the consideration of whether you should be allowed to stay. I have US-born children. Please let me stay with them. The government's response is, good for you, take them with you. And lastly, I'm a good person. I've done good things for my neighbors, my church, my country. Completely irrelevant. And the current administration has made clear that they do not value any of those items. There are 10 to 12 million people currently living in the US without any kind of status, living in hiding, as I said, in mixed status families. The Trump administration has announced its intention to deport all of them, not just people with criminal records. And as I'll say in one moment, this big bill that was passed 2 weeks ago now makes this feasible. It's estimated that legal protections, one of those 4 roads, exist for maybe 10% of those 10 to 12 million people residing in the country without documents, 10%. But I also want to note that between 2005 and 2019, which is when stats were available, refugees, asylees, immigrants contributed in Los Angeles, where I live, $123.8 billion to the US economy. In LA County alone in 2019, they paid $9.6 billion in federal taxes and $5 billion in state and local taxes. These people are critical to the well-being of our entire community. Just a little image for you. I was in immigration court 2 days ago. This is what immigrants who are trying to comply with the law are greeted with when they walk in the front door and get through security. Those are US Marines. They're not security guards, and they're carrying semi-automatic weapons. I went into one courtroom where there were 12 matters on the calendar on Tuesday afternoon, and 4 people were there. And in my experience before this last couple months period, immigrants show up at their court hearings. So this sort of performative, it was scary for me to walk through this. I cannot imagine what our sisters and brothers trying to comply with the proceedings experience. And one last point before I hand it over. How will they enforce what they set out to do? ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is the primary agency responsible for finding and deporting people who are here without permission. They have only 20,000 employees in the country. That's not very much. You know, most police forces in major cities have as many. That's why we've seen the National Guard and the Marines called up in Los Angeles for a big show of force. What else do they have? Well, before the big bill, they had signed up 826 police forces throughout the country on these agreements that are called Immigration and Nationalization Act, Section 287G agreements, where state and local police act as the arms of ICE. That existed before, but the big bill passed by Congress 2 weeks ago added $170.7 billion of taxpayer money to immigration and border enforcement over a multi-year period. 45 billion of that will be spent on expanding detention facilities to double the number of beds that people are in on their way to being deported. This week, the administration announced their intention to stop immigration judges from offering bond for people who are going through the immigration court system. That's been a bedrock of the immigration system since we started incarcerating people. $29.9 billion will be designated for ICE enforcement and deportation operations, which means they will dramatically increase the number of agents and expand their removal capacity. On June 23rd of 2025, without explanation, the US Supreme Court allowed the administration to deport migrants to third countries with which they have no relationship, including war-torn countries like South Sudan. And then finally, I'll just note that the big bill added very costly fees that applicants must pay now. For asylum, for a work permit, the fees are $400 and $500, a year, repeated fees, which most newly arrived migrants can't afford. This is a significant change in funding for detention and deportation capacity, and it reflects an extremely hostile attitude toward migrants from our federal government. So I just wanted to set that table, and now I will turn it over to Dr. Cecilia to give us some hope, maybe.
Thank you, Linda. And indeed, you always make me most proud. Well, thank you also to Heidi. As you can tell, we are a Loyola Marymount University crew here today. And thank you to Just Faith, because you're doing very important work in inviting all these folks from all over the country to be with us. So friends, this is, as was said, the third time actually that I'm joining you to discuss the questions surrounding faith and immigration this year. And this need to meet 3 times in just a few months tells us 2 things, right? That this is work that is really urgent and that it is constantly changing. And today I'm coming to you as our region of Southern California, where all 3 of us are, has become ground zero for immigration raids, for abductions, for intimidation, and also for the suppression of dissidents. Now, also today, July 17th, many of us are going to turn out across the country to make a visible stand against the purposeful cruelty of this current administration that's targeting the most vulnerable immigrants and the poor. And I will not be able to stay after we get done today because I am rushing out to a prayer vigil, an interfaith prayer vigil that we will be holding here in Los Angeles. So at this fateful time, right, in our nation's history, I want to turn you to your heart. This past Sunday, I made my way to one of the Spanish masses here in Los Angeles because I wanted to do 3 things. First, I wanted to see how the community was doing, and that's the researcher side of me. Second, I wanted to show solidarity in a tangible way, and that's the activist side of me. And third, I wanted to accompany them, to pray with them, and to have being in communion with them deepen my faith. And that's the side of me that is grounded and motivated by faith. Now, this rootedness in my faith is why I am a researcher, a scholar, a writer, an educator, and an activist. Because the more deeply I enter my faith, the more committed I can be to the hard work that is required by that faith. So these days we hear a lot about compassion fatigue, and I'm hoping that this invitation that I'm making for you to engage your heart, which is where your faith is rooted, will help each of us to navigate this moment of exhaustion a little better. As Linda alluded, we need a little hope. So back to the Spanish language Mass. After women and children holding roses processed in behind a beautifully hand-stitched banner of Our Lady of Guadalupe, we were greeted by the presider, a Mexican priest sent in mission to serve us on this side of the border. And everything about the liturgy served a congregation in great need of consolation. Now, during the homily, I could see the priest draw on his experience of pastoral care from the margins as he adapted the method that most of us have been taught for facing issues of social justice. Now, if you recall your formation, the method is see, judge, act. But making a direct reference to the gospel reading on Sunday, which was the story of the Good Samaritan and the intense suffering of our communities due to the immigration raids, the priest from the borderlands changed the formula. Ver, to see, he told us, is crucial, and we must make every effort to not look away from what is happening, something that Linda is helping us to do very clearly. But then rather than judge, he changed the second step, changed it to sentir. And sentir means to feel. The Latin root sentire is about how we know something through our senses. And in Spanish, the word grew to mean engaging the deeper knowing that happens when we engage our emotions as a spiritual sense. So to sentir is to feel in a way that is unguarded, deep, and intentional. And so much so that when a tragedy befalls someone, we use sentir as a verb. Lo siento. Literally, I feel it and I feel you. And it means we're not alone in the brokenness, and it communicates deep sorrow that is shared. So instead of see, judge, act, we now have the invitation to see, feel, act. And I quickly recognize this as a powerful way to train ourselves as people of faith. We know that one of the most dangerous things about moments of severe crisis like this one is that in an instinctive act of self-preservation, we numb ourselves, right? You know what I mean? We pull away from reality and from feeling anything because it's just all too much. So how can we celebrate our daughter's birthday and at the very same time sentir, feel what is happening to our community so we can act for and with them? Now, one answer to this is to recognize that in every process of seeing, feeling, and acting, we are living into God's vision for us. In other words, instead of self-preservation, our avoidance of what is difficult diminishes us. It is a loss of our freedom. It's a giving up on our own humanity. So to see, feel, and act for and with others is to live into our fullness and our full humanity. So, yes, we can celebrate a birthday. Happy birthday to my daughter Elise. And we can sing with joy in our liturgies and cultivate an openness to feel, to sentir, that moves us to love our sisters and our brothers more deeply, to love life more deeply, and to live into our vocation as Christians more fully, because we love God more deeply, because we are risking for God. Now, in the 10th chapter of the Gospel of John, we hear one of Jesus's clearest statements about his own ways of feeling and acting in the world. And as he reflects on the image of a shepherd, he tells us something that could describe us today. A thief comes only to steal and slaughter and destroy. I came so they might have life and have it more abundantly. So when we see and then allow ourselves to feel, we're first unmasking the many thieves unleashing destruction, and then we're fully throwing ourselves into acting as the work of Jesus to become bringers of abundant life. So when we finish this time of nurturing each other today, my friends, let's go out with renewed vigor, with ganas, as we say, knowing that a just faith requires us to see, to feel, and to act so that all may have life and have it more abundantly. So thank you so much. And now I turn it over to Heidi, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Cecilia. And thank you to my colleagues at Just Faith for opening up this platform for us to continue this conversation in a very unique way as Southern Californians, as Angelinos. And just to share a little bit about myself, my immigration story began in the 70s when my parents came each from their different parts of the Philippines, immigrated to the United States, met each other in Chicago, and then moved here to Los Angeles, where I was born and raised. And so I've studied, attended schools in Los Angeles my whole life with other immigrant students, served in parishes with families of mixed status, taught undocumented, to be an Angelino, part of a very vibrant, large population, over 9.6 million people in LA County alone, which is larger than the vast majority of our 50 states. And I'm currently very proud to also work for Just Faith Ministries, who has recently signed on to an amicus brief to the Pasito v. Trump case that's going to begin oral arguments in September around some of the issues that Linda spoke about. And so thank you, Dr. Cecilia, for inviting us to feel as part of this evening, because I've had a very large mixed range of emotions in recent weeks, as many of you who I noticed in the chat are from the LA area also. And thank you from those who are joining from across the country. As a resident of Los Angeles, I've been angered by the political theater that's taken place that destroys lives and families of hardworking parents, siblings, spouses, colleagues, neighbors, and the terrorizing of residents, both including citizens, for citizens with brown skin who don't know if they're going to be stopped, interrogated, disbelieved, and disappeared. Those of you who are in other parts of the country may not get to hear some of the local news stories that we hear on a daily basis of what happens to people who maybe who appear that they should be stopped for whatever reason. We can, maybe get into the legality of that as well, if people are interested. I live in a part of the city where there's a main highway that runs a few miles away from where I live, And I work from home, so I have a home office, and I don't normally hear cars, but in the last few weeks, the noise of sirens, caravans, packs of cars going up and down this freeway that heads towards downtown where our federal building is. It's loud and it's deafening. Normally, I can't hear a single car from that freeway, but I hear it multiple times a day. Squads of helicopters that go past overhead, and to hear these sounds and feel these sensations that you don't normally feel. I've been down to the federal building, to other places in prayer vigils. So I've been very heartened to be in these liturgies in the streets with other people of faith who are standing in solidarity. I've been encouraged by fellow local residents showing up in nonviolent demonstration, showing up in faith, speaking up for and giving witness to sometimes the perfect strangers, moving into rapid response to care for their neighbors. And so it saddens me and angers me to see our beautiful city that is plastered sometimes across the news in false narratives and sometimes just outright lies. And so at this time, I want to invite, Dr. Cecilia and Linda to share what is factual or untrue, perhaps, that you would like to give name to dispel about what's happened recently in Los Angeles or other parts of the country around immigration, what is happening, and what are some of maybe the false narratives that you'd like to name also at this time.
I can address that a little bit from the legal side, and unfortunately, the false narratives, I think, have been circulating in the immigrant community, and they're starting to break. But I tried to address that in one of the slides I showed you, that I've been here a long time. I'm a good person. I don't have any criminal background. I'll be okay. And that, I think, maybe you have to believe that to go to sleep at night or to comfort your child. But it is not how our government is operating right now. If you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, which means if you work in a setting where there are many undocumented people, like a factory or a farm, you are highly at risk regardless of your criminal status. If you have someone in your household who has a criminal record and you don't, you are highly at risk. And if you go to public places where people with criminal records might also be there, a concert venue, a ball game, you're highly at risk because the government is taking anyone and everyone who doesn't have demonstrable ability to stay in the country to meet numbers.
On my end, I think one of the false narratives that I would point everyone to is people claiming that they're Christians and voting the way that they are voting in terms of our Congress, claiming Christianity, a kind of Christianity that somehow maps onto a white supremacist nationalist agenda, which is the absolute opposite of the gospel. And to me, it is profoundly offensive that the name of Christ is being used to do the opposite of what he left us as our work to do. So I do think that all of us who are people of faith and people of conscience need to call this out in every single way that we can. Other false narratives that we are having to dispel just in a heartbreaking way, honestly, is that we might be safe inside church. That there's such a thing as sanctuary or a sanctuary campus like a university. There is no such thing. We have had in the Los Angeles area, we have had ICE set up their operations in parking lots of Catholic churches. We have had them run on foot, but nevertheless breached the gates of one of our Catholic colleges to grab a woman who was a worker there. So the idea that there is any kind of a safe space, or honestly any kind of decency, is a false narrative right now. And what does that mean for people of faith? It means that we have to be even stronger in the opposite direction. And that's something that we were taught, right, by Martin Luther King Jr. very well, right? And the whole idea of nonviolent resistance, because some of the beautiful demonstrations that I've been part of, and I will be part of tonight, we have purposefully been carrying flowers and placing those flowers at the feet of the law enforcement that are lined up to stop us, and praying and singing, because in the end, I do have to believe that there are a lot of good people that are caught in a bad and awful situation. And we have to give them the courage, the support, and the strength to walk away, to remember who they are, to remember what they believe, and to become part of the resistance to this cruelty. And yes, it's risky. It's risky for all of us to do this, but it is what the gospel requires. And this gives us an opportunity to really live much closer to what our early church was like than ever in our own history, at least in the United States. Many of us may have had experiences of persecution and fear in our countries of origin. Now we're here. So what do we do? How do we show the real face of Christian people and the real courage that necessitates from us?
Thank you. And that image, just to expand on that, of these interfaith vigils, where we leave flowers. At one of the recent ones, it's an interfaith vigil. One of our Protestant ministers is naming it as the federal building, the steps of the federal building being an altar of a cathedral of violence, is what it has become. And so we left flowers there, and just also that people know that, we are there in nonviolence, but it's something that we also have to work at, we have to prepare for. And so those of you who are on this call who have been in the streets, who have been in prayer with us, and work towards, and so that others might know that that's something that we invite you to engage in as well. Coming back to some of the policy changes, these ideas of lack of sanctuary, lack of safe space. One of the other images I'd also like you to consider is the use of plain clothes and masked individuals. And Dr. Celia just grabbing a woman, being a woman anywhere, being grabbed by masked and plainclothes individuals is terrorizing in itself. The parish that I go to is across the street from the county hospital that serves perhaps one of the largest undocumented populations, and people are afraid to even just come to the emergency room, and so the most sacred and holy of places in people's lives have become evacuated in a lot of senses. And so I'd like to invite Linda and Celia to come and talk about what are other recent policy changes that we've seen in action that people should know about, that are happening in Los Angeles, that might be happening in your parts of the country next, that you should be aware of. One of the things that people have asked about are these changes, know your rights, and making efforts to do those workshops. But in these cases, those rights have essentially disappeared. Due process has become undone, and so it's we've shifted into rapid response. And so Cecilia and Linda, if either of you would like to jump in on that and talk about what are some changes that we're seeing about policy, about how people might respond as these changes might be coming to your parts of the country soon as well.
Well, one point that I think I'd feel negligent if I didn't mention it is that the idea about standing up, making yourself known, going to a vigil, if you're a clergy or a religious person, wear the outfit so that people see what you stand for. You'll never know what impact you're going to have on an ICE officer or a Marine that sees, Sister so-and-so was here and she didn't seem to like what I was doing. You will never be able to measure that, but those are impactful things. But this is not a time for our undocumented brothers and sisters to be going to protest. That is an extremely dangerous thing for them to do. So I don't think that's what Cecilia was pushing, but I just wanted to say that this is a time for those of us who have the privilege of being citizens here to stand up and show our faces and say that we do not agree. But your question was, what else has happened on things like know your rights, the government funding for nonprofits. Government actually funded a lot of that kind of work. Much of it went through Catholic Charities and other kinds of religious and faith-based organizations, and that funding was eliminated, completely eliminated. Funding that supported agencies like Kids in Need of Defense, that found pro bono lawyers for unaccompanied children, eliminated. Any in the courthouse presentations to immigrants about how the system works and what you might need, funding eliminated. Funding for, I know there was a question in the chat about refugees, and if you're here as a refugee, are you in danger? Refugee is a technical word that means somebody that got to the country because they already proved outside of the country their severe persecution, and they were qualified, background checked, and offered a place in the country. So if you came as a refugee, you have to spend 1 year here as a refugee, and then you apply for a green card. Those people are as safe as any person who is not a citizen is. They're in the best possible situation if you've come as a refugee. But one of the very first things that the Trump administration did was zero out the number of refugees that will be allowed to come into the country. And they, like many things that they do, the president by law gets to determine how many refugees come into the country in any given year. The president does have the ability to do that. So we expected that zeroing out going forward. But this administration said, and we're not going to let the people who've already been approved, who are in the pipeline, where refugee agencies have already spent their time, we're not even going to let them come in. So lawsuits are pending about that, one of which Just Faith, working with a number of other faith-based groups, submitted an amicus brief in that lawsuit. But everywhere you look in the immigration space, money has been eliminated, options have been eliminated, and by and large, it's been done legally. Then on the top of that, there's sort of a frosting of ICE agents, rogue ICE agents, masking, and things that are just off the charts bad. That I guess the message that I hope everybody understands is that if the courts do their job and stop that nonsense, the administration still has tremendous power and the ability to move people out of the country lawfully. So how do we change that? I mean, that's probably a later question, but it has to do with changing who makes the law.
Yes, and that's a wonderful lead into what I want to say, Linda, because I do want to put this in the bigger picture, right? I do political theology. And what is the aim, big picture of what we're seeing, right? We are seeing an ethnic, racial class cleansing, right? You want to get rid of the brown and Black people, you want to get rid of the poor people, and you want to get rid of people who are different from you. That's a big part of this agenda, but it's bigger than that, right? Because we are seeing journalism completely gutted today. You know, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS had their funding taken away. Why? Because journalism allows for investigation and truth telling. We are seeing an enormous attack on higher education. Why? Because I get to have people in my classrooms like Linda and others and Heidi, people who will come out of classrooms with a consciousness and language and power to question what is done against the vulnerable. Why are the arts being taken over and taken away? Because the arts often are the first place where difficult
I'm
things
addressing
are
it.
said. Yeah, right. And so we have a big picture here, right, that tells us that this is quite an intentional and a concerted effort to create a country that is different from the country that we have lived in and that many of us came to because it had a beautiful and wonderful promise of the democratic experiment, a country of immigrants, a country built on the idea that people had dignity and fullness. So I don't think that the framers ever imagined that someone with the basest possible motivation and with a complete lack of morality would be elected president, and that then they would be surrounded by people for whom the only thing that matters is their own power. And so, as people of faith, right, we have to put ourselves back into that occupied land where Jesus was, right? Back into that space where they were people in danger, at risk, fighting and trying to hold together a community. And we have to make ourselves like them, right? We have to break down the privilege that we may have. We have to maybe not carry. I will not carry my passport with me because if they're going to take Latinas off of the street, I want them to take me too. And then I want them to have to explain why. And if you are a person who has privilege, I want you to go and be at every Latino business that you possibly can. I want you to make yourself visible, present. If you can't get the news, go to the Spanish language stations. They're covering stuff. They're telling stuff, right? So there's a lot that we can do, but this is not the world that we used to know. This is a different world. And it's a world that as Christians, we are ready to face. And as Christians, we're ready to change. And that's what we need to come together and hold each other up to do this work.
Thank you both so much. We are going to do one more question as the panel, and then we'll pause for some announcements and invitations for what everyone can do next, and we will take Q&A from the audience. So just to let people know, we're going to go past the hour. Usually we'll go about 15 past the hour for Acting for Justice. So if anyone does need to drop off, we might have your questions. So hang on for the recording as well. So the final question before we start to invite some from the audience, as people of faith, we need to consider how we're responding to the injustices that we're witnessing. You both have spoken to it a little bit. Pope Francis insisted that we are not living in an age of change, but a change of age. And so do the events surrounding the suffering of immigrants and the general state of war in our world have the potential to transform the way we live Christianity and how we understand what it means to profess discipleship of Jesus?
Well, let me throw some practical ideas at you, and then Cecilia will give you some brilliance and hopefully again some hope. we have to change the law. That is required to change the situation. The nearest law we can change is in 2026. The only way to change the law in this country, contrary to what you might glean from the president's executive actions, is Congress. And Congress is not doing its job. So we have the opportunity to support people who will do what's right, who will listen, and who will do what's right. That might mean supporting somebody where you live, but it might mean supporting somebody financially in a place you don't live, but where there's opportunity for change. Until Congress changes, the law will continue to be what it is. What can you do if you're not political? Are you retired? Do you have an investment portfolio? Are you living off of some kind of pension? I would ask you whether it's invested in private prisons. The private prison industry is going to make a king's ransom off of that big bill, building private facilities that their stockholders will be making money on. Are you complicit in that? Think about that. Don't let this issue be secret. Have you ever heard your pastor or your rabbi or whatever speak about these issues in church? Ask them why not if you haven't. Ask them, why is this issue not being raised? It's right in the gospel we heard this week. And if the answer is it's too divisive, then you have a problem in your church. You have a problem in your location. And talk to the people sitting to your right and left and listen to them. Listen to them. Don't lecture them. That never works. That's what I'm doing right now. But, listen to people. Don't let this issue become like after World War II in Germany, when so many Germans said, well, we just didn't know what was going on. Don't let this be an issue where anyone can say, I just didn't know. Cecilia?
Absolutely, Linda. That is the key, right? To accompany, okay? And the idea of accompaniment is that we walk alongside someone. And what is that gonna mean, right? Right now, I'm accompanying a young asylum seeker mother who's a single mother with a 5-year-old and another baby on the way. Where's she gonna live? Am I gonna go? I did go to court with her, right? What does she need? Diapers? What are we gonna do, right? Or the young college student, right, who now is bereft of possibly having their scholarship, or is too scared to go to class. There's so many places where we can accompany people and help to close that gap between what we hope for them and what it is right now. And we need to do it where we are. And that's a really important thing. As Linda said, we need to begin wherever it is that we are and say, what's happening here? Are we talking about this? Are we doing anything about it? Who are my people? Who are the people that can come with me and start building something? Linda and I have worked together for years with undocumented young people, right? And it was way before this, right? So building a community of people that are invested in making change, transforming the world, and also, I'm going to just add, as a theologian, praying a lot. And I think we have a saint in heaven for whom this was really important, and that's Pope Francis. Pope Francis, protector of immigrants. Pray for us.
Thank you. In a moment, Leela is going to provide some invitations for how we can start to actualize what Linda and Cecilia just shared. I would just add that now is a time to find areas where you might be uncomfortable and become uncomfortable. And discipleship is meant to have a price. As a young person, younger person, this is one of the first times I've ever gone into the streets myself and marched. And and put myself out there, and have begun to have conversations and reach out to people to talk about issues, to invite them to reach out to their senators, to their representatives, on things that we've never talked about. And we're going to provide some ways that you can begin to get this started. Some of it with some Just Faith programs that you can do locally with your people. One of the ways also is to find your people, and doing a program or a circle or can be a really great way to start. People who are on the call today are people that I've walked with for the very first time, and they were walking for the very first time, and that helps to take a brave step to go with others. And then finally, just exactly as Cecilia said, this is spiritual warfare. And so it must be also met with spiritual power and prayer. And to do that, to find your people, to go in prayer, and then go in power together. So thank you. We're going to continue with Q&A. Please continue to drop things into the chat. I'm going to hand it over to Leila for a few announcements, and then we'll come back with Cecilia and Linda.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Dr. Cecilia and Linda. And I wanted to just, as Heidi said, let you all know about a few opportunities that we have available through Just Faith Ministries. The first is that we have a program titled Faith and Immigration Justice. The prayer that was shared at the beginning of tonight's presentation is from that program. This is a great program to continue this conversation, to learn about the history of U.S. immigration policy, and to wrestle with how do we, as people of faith today, take action in our communities alongside our neighbors. And so I'd invite you to consider offering this program. It is for a small group, and that can be done in a church or outside of a church. And we have an information meeting coming up on the 22nd. So if you're interested in learning a little more, this is an hour-long presentation that's also recorded if you can't make the time. And we'll tell you about the program, talk to you about how to get started, how it can be used in your community, a time for you to ask any questions, and just explore a little more. So I invite you to join us on the 22nd. I also invite you to join us on the 23rd. If you are brand new to Just Faith Ministries, if you are here tonight because you got an invite to join and you aren't familiar with our work or how our work can be a tool for you in your community, come and hang out with us on the 23rd. I'll be there, Jack will be there, and we'll just have an informal time to connect, talk about our work and what's going on in your communities. And then finally, I wanted to invite you to join us again next month. We have these monthly webinars on a variety of different topics. And I invite you to join us next month for a presentation titled Promoting Justice in Multicultural Parish Gifts and Challenges. And that'll be on August 14th. It's a Thursday afternoon/evening, depending on your time zone. So come back, join us, engage in more learning together as we continue to find our way in community. And then maybe the very last thing is as Heidi said, that our programs are designed for small groups to be in community with one another, to learn and to grow and to find meaningful ways to take action. So you are not in this alone, and you don't have to be. And our programs might be a tool for you as you continue on your journey. So consider it, reach out if you need anything. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Jack.
Thanks, Leila. I appreciate all of you hanging in there with us tonight, and thank you for being here. Well, Linda, Heidi, Cecilia, I'm thinking there's a lot of questions in the chat about what to do next, and I know that you've addressed this in bits and pieces, and I'm just wondering if you would mind sort of listing number 1, 2, and 3, just to be arbitrary about this. What are the critical things people can do tomorrow when they get up to help with this, with what we're confronted with today? And I realize it kind of puts you on the spot for prioritizing the top 3 things, so we won't hold you to that, but just concrete ideas about what people can do tomorrow.
Did we lose Cecilia?
Yeah, Cecilia had to, just so you guys know, she had to get on the road to across town for that interfaith vigil. And
okay. Can I share my screen for just a second? I think I have a, I might have something on that, and I'm happy to show the slides with anyone who wants them. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I said this before, but the administration is doing things that aren't legal and will get struck down, like rounding up people without reasonable suspicion, which is the immigration term for probable cause, plain clothes, masked agents, all that kind of thing. Those actions are being challenged in court. Let them be challenged in court. Don't go to a protest and get in a fight with somebody or try and get in an argument or intervene. You will not help anybody who's in trouble, and you're going to create a world of hurt for yourself. And yeah, so don't do that. Sorry, I've lost up. The single most important thing I believe that you can do is to start calling, writing, and meeting with Congress people. And that means Congress and the Senate, and demand that they change the law to accommodate our migrant brothers and sisters, and be specific that you mean the people that are here now. And there's 10 to 12 million of them. Congress people are not that interested in hearing messaging from people not in their constituency. Their job is mostly to get elected again. So they listen to the people that might be able to vote for them. But you can support opponents. You can support opponents in places that you don't live. So tell people if they do not make a place for people that are living in this country, supporting us, feeding us, as somebody said in the chat, parking our cars, taking care of us, taking care of our parents, that you will vote for somebody else. The second thing I think is to get over our shyness, maintain our humanity, and not, this is hard for me as a lawyer, or maybe it's just as a person. We should not demonize our opponents. You will never change somebody's heart or mind in a conversation that doesn't include real listening and compassion. But let's get over, this is too hard to talk about. Let's get over that. Let's talk about this in our social circles, in our churches, in our communities, with your pickleball group or whatever you like to do. Let's raise these issues. And that may be the hardest thing to do. So those are my two. Reach out, I guess, if I needed a third. Somebody asked if the Catholic Church has things here in most dioceses. Yes. I know here in Los Angeles, our immigration task force has, go on the internet and find the volunteer page. And there's many ways you can contribute to support people. You just have to reach out.
Thanks, Linda. Heidi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Linda said about reaching out to people, starting to talk to people. As was mentioned earlier, I work in, we find ourselves pushing on an open door, but it's also a challenge to reach out to people that you have relatives, you have neighbors that moved away, and reach out across state lines, reach out across county lines, to find people and say, here's an action alert that I'm going to fill out, but it definitely has more power where you live. Would you take 2 minutes and submit this form letter, put your name on it and submit it where you live? And you'd be surprised. I've often been surprised by the very first time that we're asking somebody to do something they've never done before, that they've just been waiting to be asked. And so maybe take that step to be asked. There's a couple of comments in the chat about, living in places with less diversity. So seek out stories and then make sure to echo those stories. So if you're in a place where maybe a talk like this tonight is less available, for the link for when the recording comes out, maybe gather some people with you and say, let's watch this, or watch it about what we heard tonight. There were 2 other previous talks given by Cecilia earlier this year. They're fantastic primers for the conversation. Or if you're really ready to jump in, the Just Faith program that Leila mentioned. And then number 3 finally would be, and I've heard this at one of our prayer vigils, is that now is a time where we're going to be constantly, if we're engaged, we're going to be also constantly being tired and depleted, to make sure that you're doing those things that keep yourself fed, because there's going to be once you get going, there's going to be a desire to keep going until you're spent. But as the scripture says, we're meant to have life abundantly. And so we need to make sure that we have enough to overflow of ourselves. And so do those things that keep yourself rested, keep yourself joyful in the face of desolation as well. And so to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as you commit to this work.
Thanks, Heidi. And if I could take the opportunity to add maybe one other suggestion, which basically just fills out what the two of you have already said. My experience over time is that there are many things that I could never do by myself, maybe because they're new or because they're risky. What I find is if I join hands with 7 or 8 or 9 other people, I can do just about anything. And so I find where there can be a tremendous amount of strength and purpose given by just joining hands with a handful of people who will hold us accountable, which we can do this together, maintain some kind of maybe sense of humor or sense of peace about things going forward, and march forward that way. And so I just encourage us all to think about community as kind of that piece that allows us to sustain hope and do things that otherwise we quite frankly just could not do. So I just throw that into the mix as well. Linda, there have been all kinds of questions in the chat about possible exceptions to the possibility of people being deported. And I'm wondering if maybe I could just invite you. I know you've been trying to respond to some folks in the chat, but not because not everybody's reading the chat. Would you mind just sort of commenting on some of those as you've seen them, and just let people know how you've responded to those exceptions?
Sure. As I think I said, if you're here with refugee status, you don't need an exception. I've seen a lot of questions about farm workers who I mean, you can't eat in this country without being dependent on a farm worker, and those farm workers are probably undocumented. Farmers as a group, the majority of farm workers supported Trump. And when they were interviewed before the election, said things like, well, I'm sure if he takes away our farm workers, he'll immediately come up with a program to bring them back. And maybe that was naive. It's not easy to come up with programs and make things happen. And passing laws is quite challenging. But farmers as a group have been asking quite loudly for exceptions. Stop raiding farms. If somebody is a farm worker, give them an exception. And the administration is now seeing blowback because the supporters of the Trump administration are not one thing. They're people who have, many different issues, sometimes grievance driven, and then other issues they don't care about. But there is a sizable group that says immigration is the third rail. And if you give anyone an exception, you'll be, we'll stop supporting you. So initially, this is in the last couple weeks, the administration said they were going to stop raiding farms and factories to support farm workers. And they got incredible blowback. And then they said, we didn't say that there won't be raids of farms and factories, and there will never be an amnesty for farm workers. And they're trying to sort through the competing interests of the people that supported them. And it's a puzzle. I don't know how they will do it. The country will not work, as I think somebody made that point in the chat. The country will not work at an eating and other levels without people who are already here without documents. I don't know there were many questions in the chat I couldn't get to.
Yeah, that's quite all right. I appreciate that response, and that is helpful. I'm looking at time, and we have just a couple of minutes left, so I just want to maybe close by inviting both you, Heidi, and Linda, with any kind of closing comments that you'd like to offer, if you have any.
This is a Cecilia comment. I mean, go listen to more of her. She warms my heart. And I did offer the image of Mary, undoer of knots, because this is a knot. People are so adamant and so angry. And then other people are brokenhearted and really hurting. And there's lots of children in that mix. And it's such a knot. So if we can do anything to soften the knot, and if that means encountering people, being with people, find a way to meet some people who are suffering, I guess I would be there, and I would encourage that.
Thank you, Linda.
And more of the same, I would, again, seek out stories. Don't be afraid to lean in and get close and talk to folks that you've never talked to before and ask about things you've never asked about before. Both folks who are affected and maybe those who have been staying on the sidelines. Again, they may just be waiting for someone to invite them in and to talk about issues that they've never talked about or considered out loud, and to just start to reach out.
Well, Linda and Heidi, you're an inspiration to us. Thank you both for your testimony tonight, and we're deeply appreciative. If I could invite everybody who's on the call, whose pictures up, just to offer a silent clap for our speakers tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Yeah, just to restate, Leela will be sending an email to all of you with a video link to tonight's presentation. So please, 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 lots of good information on this presentation. Share it like you can at your local community or church, because this is one way to get the word out. And I'm going to close our time with a prayer. And as we close our time together this afternoon and evening, we will share together a prayer from, again, our small group program, Faith and Immigration Justice, that Leela mentioned previously. And after each of the petitions, I will raise my hands on the screen and invite you to respond with these words that you'll find in the chat. And the words are, help us to pour out your love and compassion to all our brothers and sisters. And you can leave yourself muted and speak those words along with me, because you know it doesn't work very well on a Zoom call for everybody to try to pray together. So we'll do it that way. Okay, let us pray. Creator God, your loving care is home for all. No one is a stranger to you. With your generous blessings, watch over migrants and all who leave their homes to escape oppression, poverty, persecution, trauma, and violence. Help us also to be sources of blessings through our acceptance and valuing who they are as persons, eager for wholeness of life. We pray, help us to pour out your love and compassion to all our brothers and sisters. Creator, you taught us to welcome all. Help us to remember that the land we call ours is a gift to be cared for and a gift to be shared with all who come. May we be open to all those searching for a safe and peaceful life, we pray. Help us to pour out your love and compassion to all our brothers and sisters. Creator, help us to respect and revere the unknown between and among us. May we grow into new discoveries and accept new ways of learning about our common needs and desires. May respect and reverence break down our fear, anxiety, suspicion, racism, hate, and closed-heartedness toward others, we pray. Help us to pour out your love and compassion to all our brothers and sisters. Creator, we build barriers in our hearts and make judgments that keep us from seeing others for who they are, the potential they have, and the talents they've been given. You taught us to give witness to your love for all people. May we be accepting of those who want to be our neighbors. May we rejoice in their talents and accept new life perspectives from them. We pray, help us to pour out your love and compassion to all our brothers and sisters. Creator God, you who are present in all of humankind, guide us to be mindful of your presence and help us to act in ways pleasing to you towards all those who search for a better life. May we reach out to migrants in need of help and acceptance and stand by them as brothers and sisters in Christ. We ask this through Jesus, the Christ, who was a migrant. Amen. Again, thank you all for being with us tonight. We so deeply appreciate your presence, and let's hold each other in prayer as we go forward to try to be light and leaven to this world. You're welcome to stay with us for a couple of minutes, and feel free to come off mute if you like and say goodbye as you sign off. Again, thank you for being with us, and you can look forward to an email from Leela providing all the links and information and recording of tonight's presentation. Thanks again, everybody.